So thank you very much for joining me today. Our session is really on the judge and how to quieten your inner judge, the top saboteur that we have. And really what we're going to be covering off today is some insights into the various different ways that the judge helps sabotage our potential for performance and well-being. And I'll be sharing some useful tools to help us overcome and quieten our judge and strengthen the part of our brain that actually helps to serve us. And then at the end, we should have some time for Q&A. So I'm just going to ask you to park your questions until then, unless you want to clarify anything, in which case just please jump in and let me know. So a little bit about me, just by way of background. I currently live in the UK. I've lived in Singapore for 18 years. My career before coaching was all about advertising and marketing technology. So I held a number of senior roles within marketing and sales and operations and management. And it's always been very important for me to balance two fundamental needs. So the first is the need for outer success and achievement and pushing myself and growth. And the other one is inner peace. And so, you know, to me, my whole life has been about balancing those two sides, using both parts of my brain, my left brain and my right brain. So that's taken me down quite an interesting journey on the logical route. It's, you know, studying positive psychology, neuroscience, anything to do with business strategy and goal orientation and accomplishment, all of those things. But on the right-hand side of my brain, it's also been meditating since I was 16. You know, I studied Buddhism for 4 years up to the level of a novice monk. I used self-hypnosis to have our two daughters. So I've really been melding those two different parts of myself. And I guess you're going to experience that in today's workshop, because I will bring the two different aspects of looking at the judge. So before I start, I want to share a story, and some of you will be familiar with this story, either because I've told it or because it's quite a well-known one, but it's the story of the two wolves. And in this story, you have the grandfather and his son. They're both Cherokee Indians, Native American Indians. And the grandfather is putting his son to sleep, his grandson to sleep, and he's telling him the story that inside us all, we have two wolves, a good wolf and a bad wolf. And the positive wolf, the good wolf, is all about joy and love and compassion. It's all about wisdom and kindness and curiosity, all of those virtues. But the negative wolf, the bad wolf, is all about self-doubt and anger and shame and regret and insecurity and greed. And these two wolves are fighting, constantly fighting. It's like a battle to the death inside us all. And the grandson says, "Whoa, Granddad, that's so cool. Do I have these two wolves?" And the granddad says, "Yes, of course you do. I do. You do. We all have these two wolves." And he said, which wolf is going to win? Which one's going to win? And the granddad says, "Whichever one you feed." Now, those two wolves actually relate to two different parts of our brain. Yeah. So on one side, you've got the positive side of the brain. And that actually is a part of your brain that sits just here. It's your prefrontal cortex, just behind your temple here. And that only starts developing when you're about 7 years old. And it only stops developing when you're about 21. And that part of your brain is responsible for things like positive emotions, peace, calm, clear, focused action, perspective, wisdom, empathy. That all comes from there. And when you're in that part of your brain, anxiety, doubt, hate literally cannot exist in that part of the brain. Now, the other negative wolf lives in the back of your brain. We call that the saboteur brain. So the front brain we're calling the sage brain, your prefrontal cortex, and the back of your brain is the survivor brain, the saboteur brain. And it's really wired to threat. It's all about guaranteeing your survival. This is your ego part of your brain, and it's responsible for your negative emotions, stress, fear, anxiety, hate, you know, all of that rumination, anger, that all lives there. And it does all those things because it thinks it's protecting us. So another story, if you'll indulge me, is the story of the sentry who's looking after, he's charged with looking after a village and making sure that no tigers or lions or other predators attack. So he's there, he's posted out by the edge of the forest. And this guy, he's completely alert, but his saboteur brain is on. He's wired for threat. And every single noise he hears is like, oh my God, this has to be a lion. Oh my God, this has to be a tiger. Oh my God, it has to be a rhino. And come 10 o'clock in the morning, he's exhausted because every single sound, it can't possibly be a squirrel or it can't possibly be a butterfly. It has to be this disaster. And he's exhausted himself come 7 o'clock that night. He has very long hours. Come 7 o'clock that night, when a tiger actually does creep through the forest, he's too exhausted to notice. And everyone gets attacked. So the whole idea is it is built for survival, but it's not really the most effective part of our brain, because what it does is it sends our body into fight, flight, or freeze. And in those states, everything is redirected into being able to survive, get out of that situation. And we literally cannot think from that creative, resourceful part of ourselves. Yeah. So, when it comes down to being able to access the two wolves and which one's we're gonna feed, we have to really be aware of the role of our survivor brain in sabotaging us. Now, we have many different saboteurs. I'm sure, if I could list a number of the ones that we work with in positive intelligence, we call them things like the controller, the victim, the hyper-achiever, the pleaser. These are all different ways we sabotage ourselves. But the master of all of these, because it's so tightly woven in to our survival instinct, is the Judge Saboteur. He's the first one that jumps in there. He or she or they, whichever pronoun you want to use, they're the first one that jumps in there because it's all about defending ourselves. And then he instigates all the other saboteurs that then pile in the belief that they're serving us. So we all know about our own inner judge, the way that we criticize ourselves, but we actually use judgment in 3 different ways, or our judge is judging in 3 different ways when we come from a saboteur perspective. So the first one is judgment of ourselves. And in this way, we badger ourselves for our past mistakes or shortcomings. Now, there's a difference here between judgment and discernment that I want to just really raise to you. Discernment, it comes from your sage brain, whereas your judge is really about blaming you for all your shortcomings, creating stress and anxiety and all of those negative emotions that I mentioned. And I draw a parallel here to, putting your hand on a hot stove. Putting your hand on a hot stove is never a good idea, but essentially what you do is your brain receives the data, don't put your hand on a hot stove, you will be burned. What you could do with that data is go, I'm not going to put my hand there again. You've taken the information, you've learned from it, and you can apply it in the future. But that's not what the judge does. It doesn't come from that discerning place. It keeps our hand on the hot stove, and it keeps us in a state of perpetual pain and suffering because we go into the realm of ego. I'm a bad person. I'm so stupid. I have, I've done it once again. And then it goes into that narrative. You can tell it's the judge when it's all about ego, and the narrative circuitry starts off and continues, right? So there's a huge difference between judgment, self-judgment, and using discernment, which is your ability to judge in a way that is productive, resourceful, creative, objective. The second way we judge is judging others. Right? And that's really pointing the finger and saying there's something wrong with them or they've done something wrong. And we get into the realm here of feeling inferior or superior to other people. Do you ever have those conversations in your head where you literally tune in and you're like having a practice argument with someone and getting all riled up and you get into this almost like a boxing defensive posture? Yeah, there you go. That's you practicing being superior, really polishing your role of ego again, right? Now, the interesting thing about the superiority is it doesn't mean you're necessarily better. It's normally your judge masking this feeling of feeling inferior yourself. It's actually compensating for low self-esteem when you're starting to feel really superior to other people. And there's another bucket here that I want to add into the idea of judging others, is the idea of fearing others judging us. Now, I cannot overstate how big a deal this is, how everyone experiences the feeling that they are being judged by others. This fear that if they show themselves authentically, that other people are going to judge them. There's this feeling of shame. So that's the overlap between the judgment of self and judgment of others, or judgment by others. And then the last way that the judge operates is judging circumstance. Now, this one is the most hidden, and in some ways it could be considered the most dangerous because nobody really notices it. And when you judge circumstance, it gives you that feeling of powerlessness. You give your power away. So let's take these last few years. It's been certainly up and down, right? With the pandemic, and then you've got inflation skyrocketing and all of these things, like the odds are stacked against us. Oh my God, well, if I'm not going to be able to earn an extra 10% more, how can I do this? How can I keep my family safe? Oh my God, how am I going to blah, blah, blah? And then what happens is the narrative takes over, and this anxiety arises, and this stress arises, and you just believe, I don't have what it takes. It's not within me. Circumstances are happening to me. It's all going to go downhill from there. And then what happens when that happens is we stop showing up fully. We give in, we give our power away. Now, I actually started my coaching business just before the pandemic. And when it hit, I said to my business, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go into coaching full time. Intuitively, it was completely the right thing to do. But with my logical judge hat on, no way. Circumstances dictate. It was the most craziest thing to do. But I threw myself into my coaching business, feet head first, and I've never looked back. I hit my figures, my targets first year. But believing in circumstance, this idea of hypervigilance, oh no, something bad's going to happen to me, it's often a self-perpetuating truth, right? So let's do an exercise. Are you willing to do a little exercise, and we can go see our judge in action? Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be an eyes closed process. Darren, did you have a question? Or was that an agreement? No. Okay, perfect. All right, so what we're going to do is it's going to be like a 5-minute exercise, a 3 or 5 minute exercise, where we're actually going to watch the parade of consciousness, the parade of thought, or the parade of content that is going through our awareness, right? And we're going to watch our thoughts arise, abide, and then just dissolve without grasping them, without wishing them to go away. We're just going to watch. Okay. So we're going to do 2 things. The first thing is watch the parade of thoughts, like you're sitting on a beach and you're watching all these people go by and you're going, that's interesting. You're just watching. Okay. Instead of going, oh, look, there's a lady in the red dress. There's the lady in the red dress walking by. But our normal tendency is to go, oh, that's a nice red dress. I like that. God, what's happened to my red? Have I put on weight? Will I be able to fit into it? Oh God, I'm so fat in mine. Maybe I should take it to, and the story goes on. You get it? So we're just watching red dress and go by, right? And then we notice what happens when our thoughts do arise and we do start getting into that narrative, right? And just start watching our response to it and how we judge our response as either good, bad, or neutral. That's all you need to do. We're going to just watch our thoughts and see our emotional response. So I'm going to invite you to shut your eyes, to sit up straight, to take a couple of deep breaths. Noticing your abdomen expand on the in-breath and contract on the out-breath. I want you to feel the solidity of your feet contacting the ground, and allow the tension in your shoulders to just unspool. Feeling your forehead relax, your cheekbones unclenched. As we go into the space of the mind, I want you to just take a moment to watch your thoughts. Just watch them as they arise, abide, and dissolve. Just notice them without grasping or wishing them to stay or to go. Watch as your thoughts arise, your own natural response, your emotional response. Notice what role judgment is having as you assign your thoughts to good, bad, or neutral. What are you noticing about judging self, others, or circumstance? And whenever you're ready, just open your eyes. What did you notice about your judgment or your judge? I'm happy to take some shares.
I can share if you want. What I've noticed is that, yeah, depending on the thought, could be neutral, it could be positive and negative, but I thought my judge was harsher than that. So I was surprised to see that my judge has some positive things to say. And I was happy to listen to it. I think I was a bit afraid of what I had to be listening to, and I was surprised, but in a good way, I think.
Perfect. Sounds as if you had your sage discernment on. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, my one was a simple one. The fact that I committed my time to be in this session at 12, and at the same time, at the back of my mind, the judge was quite loud that you shouldn't actually be here. You should actually be doing something else, as in my work, my handovers, everything like that. And at the same time, again, I feel super vulnerable because I don't know Erin, Annette, or Felicia. And from the coaching, I've had to tell the narrative is speaking, and at the same time, I've just had to calm the critics out and go, actually, you know what? No one's here judging. It's just the judge judging you. The saboteurs are there, and it's something the others are just trying to just acknowledge it, basically. That's what I've been trying to do.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that so vulnerably, Eric. Yeah.
My thoughts inevitably turned towards work after listening to the birds for a bit. And my judge was wondering why I didn't get more emails this morning from my team and work-related emails in general. So then I started judging my team. Maybe they don't have enough to do, and then judging myself as in maybe I'm not giving them enough to do, or I'm not providing enough guidance, or I'm not just doing enough work or a good enough job. So yeah, he went off.
Great awareness. Thank you ever so much for sharing. Annette, is there anything that you'd like to share? And if
Yeah, I'm sitting in this concert with birds outside. I mean, they're so loud, and I've been sitting here and judging myself that I should be more at ease in my body and more, all this stuff I should, be unfolding. That was the main theme.
yeah. Thank you ever so much. So I'm hearing your judges are out in force, and Felicia, your judges is being kinder than you anticipated. I could hear there was a bit of judgment about the judge. Can I show you something really cool? Right? Watch this, right? Watch what I'm going to do with my hands. Okay, you ready? Watch, go. All right, stop. Did you see that? Now, what happened there? Where was your mind just then? Was it on my hands, or was it in your head thinking about everything else? It was on my hands, right? Yeah. And when you were focusing there, did you have any of the narrative, any of the judging, or were you in the present moment without any judge narrative? Yeah. And how did that feel? Yeah. So that's the state when we're able to switch off the narrative of our mind. That's where the judge plays. It's literally the rumination, the ego talking, all of that chatter that disturbs our peace. And when we're able to switch it off and be in the present moment, there is a sense of calmness, of luminescence, of clarity, of lightness. That's when you're in your prefrontal cortex. You're in the present, and you're able to take action from the present, not from the anxiety of the future or from the regret of the past, which is just fiction, both of them. You're in the present moment, able to take action. So silencing and quieting our judge is really, really important. Yeah. So the Judge Saboteur has been able to evolve and to stay so predominant in our mind because it feeds us a concoction of lies that we indulge in wholesale. We believe it's lies. And some of its lies include, without me judging and without me pushing you, you're going to get lazy and complacent, right? You need me. The judge always tells us you need me. You're better off because of me, right? Otherwise, you get lazy and complacent, you get fat and unfit, you get whatever it is. And then without me, you wouldn't learn from your mistakes. You just keep on repeating them like an idiot, right? You need me. Or, without me scaring you about future outcomes, you're not going to take the actions, the preventative actions to keep you safe or your family secure. And you need me to judge others so that you don't make yourself vulnerable and get hurt. And then you need me to make you feel bad about the outcomes so you can change the outcomes, change yourself, or whatever it is. These are all lies. Because actually, with our judge in full swing, we are less effective. So yes, it motivates us, and yes, it does produce results. The thing about our saboteurs is they're very good at getting results, driving us, but they don't create long-term happiness. They are not as effective as being in our saboteur mind, as in our sage mind, where we use all of our strengths, all of those strengths for awareness, motivation, resourcefulness, but without any of the anxiety and stress. And when we use that part of our brain, we're always looking out for our ultimate happiness, our ongoing sustainable success plus happiness. Because when you think about it, when we've got our judge out with his big boots on stomping through our brain, we are less effective because doubt and fear drains our time, our focus, our energy. It makes us less effective. And the analogy here is the basketball player, and I'm not a big sports person, so bear with me if I mix up my words, but the idea is that he's there, he's focused, it's the last few minutes of a game, he's got to shoot the hoop in order for his team to win, right? And he's focusing, his body knows what to do, he's so in tune. Normally he could just shoot, he'll score, he'll get the goal, whatever it is, he'll win. But in that moment, the saboteur comes in, the judge goes, oh my God, everything is resting on you. If you mess this up, that's the end of your career. Nobody in your team is going to be happy. You'll ruin all of their lives. Why don't you just go home now? And what starts to happen? He starts to lose his focus. His hands start trembling. He's not following the intuition of his body. He's not in the moment. He's in the anxiety of the future. He's stepped out. And he's less effective, as opposed to taking the shot, scoring. So don't believe those lies of the judge. You don't need it. It just creates that anxiety. You don't need to keep your hand on that hot stove. So Sage really enables you to use your strengths, but without the stress, to be focused and in the moment, to be present, taking action from moment to moment to moment to moment. That's being effective. So it's brilliant. Let's be in Sage all the time. How do we do it? How do we switch from saboteur to Sage brain at will? And, in my own journey, this has been something that I've been working to do pretty much all of my life, to overcome, in the Buddhist tradition, what we would call our mental afflictions, right? To constantly sharpen that sense of being able to be at your most zen effectively at any given moment, to invite ease and flow. And a couple of years ago, I came across this program called Positive Intelligence. And what they do is they work on mental fitness. And that's really about training our capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive versus negative mindset. And that impacts peak performance. It improves your peace of mind and your well-being, and it improves relationships. So I really love this because it synthesizes everything that I've learned in my own journey into a really easy methodology that pretty much anyone can try. It's secular. It doesn't use any sort of religious connotations. People who are very, very rational or people who are very non-rational, they get it, right? And this is literally, it blends the latest developments in the last 20 years of positive psychology, neuroscience, cognitive behavioral therapy, and sports science. And then they've done their own research on top of that. And it's pretty huge at the moment. It's been tested on hundreds of CEOs and their exec teams, whole leagues of Stanford students, world-class athletes, and 500,000 participants across 50 countries. So it's producing amazing results. And essentially what it does is they've used factor analysis to distill everything down into a really easy operating system. So I love the way that they talk about almost as if our brain is a computer, because nowadays everybody understands computers. That's the analogy. But when I talk about factor analysis, you've got this idea of you've got a whole palette of colors that you could produce just from mixing red, green, blue. So the principle applies. We have all of our saboteurs, all the ways that we self-talk or get in our way, all the different ways that we self-sabotage. Right? They've distilled this down into 10 key saboteurs, right? Using this factor analysis. And those 10 key saboteurs are, let's see if I can remember them off by heart. Hyper-Achiever, stickler, that's a perfectionist, the controller, the victim, the avoider, the pleaser, the hyper-vigilant, who's always thinking that the sky's going to fall on their head, the hyper-rational, the restless, and the last one being the judge. And the judge is universal. We all have the judge. They don't even put it on the saboteur report when you do the test. I'll post that at the end. You could take your free saboteur test. It takes a couple of minutes. It's fascinating. And the first thing that we do is that we start to understand what our saboteurs are. And then what they do is they start training up 3 core muscles, right? The first one is our saboteur interceptor. That's the awareness that we just did, that our saboteurs are arising and that they're telling their stories, right? Oh, that's the hyper-achiever telling me I can't switch off and read my book for half an hour because blah, blah, blah. Or there's telling me I'll never be happy until, right? That's the hyperachiever. So the first thing is saboteur interceptor. And we know that we're in this realm of being sabotaged because there are negative emotions arising. It's a big signpost. So whenever you feel emotions such as fear, stress, anger, guilt, shame, insecurity, right? You're in saboteur territory. That's how you could tell the difference between discernment and judge, for example. Discernment feels positive. It feels uplifting. Judging feels negative. It feels weighty. So our saboteurs might generate success, but they never generate happiness. So the first thing is noticing when the saboteur arises. The second muscle that we work on is the sage brain, which is your prefrontal cortex. And the way they do that is we first of all work on the sage perspective. Right now, the sage perspective is that every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift or an opportunity. And they bring this idea to life with the story, this very famous Taoist story of the Chinese farmer. And he one day has this beautiful black stallion that gallops into his fields. And he captures this black stallion, and all of his neighbors, all the other farmers come around and go, "Whoa, you're so lucky. You got a black stallion. That's amazing. You must be so happy." Now, this very wise old farmer goes, "Maybe, maybe." And then the next day, the son is trying to break in the horse, and he gets kicked and he's made lame. The son, not the horse. The horse is fine. And all his friends and neighbors come around and go, "Oh, you poor thing, your son, who's going to help you in the fields? You must be devastated." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And then the next day, the Chinese army comes through and they're conscripting young men, of which his son is the perfect age, but he can't go because he's been hobbled. And all the farmers come around and say, "Oh, you poor thing. Oh, you lucky thing. I can't believe it. All our sons have been sent off. You got away with it. You must be so over the moon." And he says, "Maybe." It's a very long story, but you get the point, right? There is that level of equanimity that it can be either a good or a bad thing. We have choice in the matter, right? Do we want to come from the sage perspective, where every gift, every circumstance or outcome can be turned into a gift or an opportunity? Or do we want to go from the judge's perspective, which is, "Oh no, everything is a danger, protect yourself"? Which one's actually right? Who's got the right perspective? I'll give you a clue. It goes back to the wolf story. They're both right. It's whichever one we feed, right? Because they both become self-fulfilling prophecies. If we believe that circumstances dictate that we can never be successful, we won't show up. And what will we experience? Lack of success. Whereas if we believe that this is a potential gift and an opportunity to spend the time on growing ourselves, for example, and we start to learn, right? We show up differently. We show up with curiosity, empathy, whatever it is. And what happens? Something very different. We create the opportunity because that's the mindset that we're in. So we're at choice here. And that's really what coaching is about. It's about providing people with a choice in their own lives to indulge their saboteur brains and to have their lives on a default trajectory, or to choose that sage perspective, or to choose that sage way of being, and to create the future that they want, right? The other thing that we practice in terms of our sage muscles is practicing the 5 sage superpowers. Now, obviously, we have so many different superpowers: creativity, resourcefulness, empathy, curiosity, all of these things. But he's distilled it down. They've distilled it down into 5 sage superpowers. The first is empathy. And that's not just empathy to others, that's also empathy to self. Because no love, no unconditional love to family, to parents, to kids can exist without self-love. It starts within, right? The next one is the explorer, right? Which is curiosity, the ability to look at the world objectively and to be fascinated and to explore and to learn. It does parts to your brain. It lights up different parts of your brain that make you susceptible to learning and growth, activating your hippocampus area, right? The next one is innovate. it's this belief when you innovate that there is a grain of truth in everything that anybody says, right? If you're having a conversation with somebody, that even if you're opposed to what they say, that they have to be at least 10% truth. 10% truth in what they're saying. And when you accept that, that changes how you think, and you can start to innovate or change your own response. And you can start to build on other people's ideas, right? It opens up that part of your mind that allows you to not just be talking at people, but to be receiving information and growing it and shifting it and changing it. The next sage superpower is your navigate superpower. And we approach that from going to our 80-year-old self, that part of ourself that is older and wiser, that is sane and strong, and that has that perspective looking back on life that generally ties into our values and purpose. What would I do in this situation if I was to look back on my life with pleasure and pride? How would I be showing up? What's important to me? What is a life well lived, right? And then the last sage superpower is activate. And the analogy here is like the Jedi warrior. You've got bombs going off here and there. You've got screaming. You've got, everything happening around you, but you're in the moment. You're present and you're connected. And you are activating. You are in the flow. You're present. You're doing whatever it is that you need to without distraction. Clear, focused attention. So those are the sage superpowers that we, that are part of the muscles that we're training. And when we start working more with our sage brain, we start to notice that not only does it motivate us and grow us, but it works for our highest happiness, sustainable happiness, as well as peak performance and well-being. Yeah. So then we've got the saboteur interceptor. That's the first muscle. The second muscle is our sage brain. And then, of course, the third muscle is how to switch from one to the other, which we call the self-command muscle. Now, the way that positive intelligence does this is super, super easy. And it's what they do is they use the understanding that our body only exists in the present, right? You saw that when I did this exercise. You were using your visual senses to tune in. And your brain was very much in the present. There was no overthinking. So what they do is they use our senses, they use our body as a vehicle to switch off your narrative mind and the judge and all the saboteurs, and to switch on your sage brain, your prefrontal cortex. And they say that you only need to do this for 10 seconds at a go, right? That's the equivalent of 3 breaths. Now you can do it for much, much longer than that, which is great. If you can do meditation in the morning, fantastic. 20 minutes in, it'll set you up for the day. But I've been a lifelong meditator. And as my husband can attest, it does not stop me from losing my shit with my kids sometimes. I could be as zen as I like, but in the moment, it doesn't help me. So needing something in the moment that will really, really help me. So what I want you to do is try this out with me. Get your 2 fingers like this, right? And very, very gently, ever so gently, I want you to just rub one against the other. And notice the tactile sensations. See if you can feel the ridges on your finger pads. Feel the texture or the heat. Your fingers dry, sweaty. Yeah, there you go. You switched on. You've just switched on your PQ brain. You switched on your sage brain. That's all it takes. And you don't always have to do this. Sometimes in the middle of a meeting, you can't go, excuse me. There's different things that you can do. You can start switching on your hearing. You can start really listening or leaning into what that person's saying, using, your sensory faculties. But all it takes is just 10 seconds, right? So what they've done is they've turned this into a really simple operating system. And there is a PQ program that takes about 6 weeks. It's like a boot camp, and you do it on the app. I highly, highly recommend it. And they say at the end of it, you can do an MRI scan, and it's shifted your brain pattern. So there's atrophy in the gray matter at the back of your brain. and there's growth in the gray matter at your prefrontal cortex just by training these 3 muscles. So these 3 muscles, I'm going to give you the operating system now. It's super easy. This is what you do, right? First of all, if you're feeling negative emotion, stop. You're in saboteur territory. You're in saboteur mode, right? Do some PQ reps. These are called PQ reps, kind of like going to the gym, but just easier. Do some PQ reps to quieten your saboteur and to activate your sage brain, right? Next, assume the sage perspective that every outcome or circumstance can be a gift or an opportunity. And then 4, generate the gift by using your sage powers, such as empathy, curiosity, creativity, calm. You don't even need to know the list. Give yourself a power word. What will help me now? Is it empathy, curiosity, playfulness? Yeah. So if you're in feeling negative emotion, stop. You're in saboteur mode. PQ rep. You can do that. What can I hear far away? What can I hear close by? You can start to feel the feelings in your toes, whatever it is. What can I smell? What can I taste? Can I feel the hair on my neck? Whatever it is. Right? Assume the sage perspective. And if you like, I can send these to you. I'll put these 4 steps in the email that I'll send out with a video replay. And that's all it is. They've literally synthesized a whole body of work into such easy steps that effectively shifts your brain and creates that mental fitness so that you start to show up by default with a more positive mindset rather than a negative mindset. Now, I can hear your judge. I can hear my judge going in and going, yeah, it's never that easy. You know, can I really shift from saboteur to sage even in the toughest challenges? And the answer is yes, you can, but the speed and depth depends on how much mental muscle you build. It's like going to the gym. If you just do this once or twice a week, nothing's going to happen. But if you commit to doing it like 100 times a day, or going through the PQ program where they actually guide you, you check in the morning, early morning, late morning, afternoon, dinner, then it will literally give you the format and the structure to build in those PQ reps to build that sage brain. And that will actually shift. It actually rewires the neural pathways where you would normally default to saboteur behavior. It creates new maps in your neurons so that you start to default to the positive behavior. It rewires your brain. It's quite incredible. So lasting change requires practice. That's the point. I can bring you this, but you've really got to practice it as much as you can for it to have effect. So as a coach, I tend to send all of my clients on this positive intelligence program, all my one-to-one clients, because it increases the breadth and the vocabulary of the work that we can do together. Also, a lot of my clients who I send through the group coaching program, I give the option to do this, like you, Eric, and our group coaching at the moment. Everyone's going to be doing the positive intelligence program. And it's really quite amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in the chat now the link so that you can take your own positive intelligence test. It takes 2 or 3 minutes. You can see your top saboteurs. They will send you an email. It's utterly fascinating. I'm also going to send you my website so that you can, if you are interested in finding out more or having a coaching session with me, if you haven't already had one, then you can book a 60-minute coaching session. But I'm doing this not to sell anything. I'm saying if you want a conversation between my sage and your sage to really understand what's blocking you, to see what it is that you want and how to get there, then let's talk. So I'll put that in there right now. And with 10 minutes left, I would love to get your feedback and questions and thoughts. Any questions? And I know Darren's actually done the program, so it would be great to get your feedback.
Thank you for everything. It was. I mean, it is fascinating. Like I've done the test at the beginning of HPC, so I know my saboteurs. But it's fantastic to have now keys to work with all this, because it's one thing to identify them, but it's another thing to know how to manage them, and with the exercises with the sage. So it's it definitely gives me the willingness to explore a lot more for myself and for my clients, because it's a test that I give to all my clients as well, and I even send it to my friends because I think it's a fantastic test, which really helps to move forward. So yeah, no, thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Felicie. Have you done the Positive Intelligence program?
No.
Okay, I can highly recommend it. It's free as a coach. Just look up the coaching grant. You will have to get in the queue. There is a wait list.
Okay.
They sponsor coaches to go on it because they really want the impact to reach all of their clients.
Yeah. Okay. I will definitely reach out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
And I'm going to be I've committed this year to running a free workshop every month on each of the different saboteurs. So if you are interested, just let me know and I'll put you on the mailing list. We're going to cover the victim, the controller, stickler. I'm going to deep dive into all of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd love to. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Darren, you've done the program, the Positive Intelligence program, and you've been applying mental fitness. What are your thoughts on the impact?
Yeah, I have, and I found it to be an excellent program. It's much more powerful if you're doing it with other people, I found, because then you have more opportunities to practice, and practice is really the key. I think it's like any program. If you go in and dip in, or you forget about it the next week or whatever, and you don't use it, then nothing changes. But what I loved about the program is that it gives a good structure, and the app almost gamifies the process, so that you're encouraged to practice and practice on a regular basis, at certain times during the day. And that's what I've found has really made the difference. There are certain things that you get a sort of an immediate response to, or you see the difference, but then a lot of it is then that gradual improvement as practice becomes embedded in your behavior, and almost subconsciously things start to change. And that may take months. I think for me, it's probably going to take over a year to really start to see things fundamentally shift. For it all to start to come together and fundamentally shift. But I'm already seeing things happen in certain places and certain sort of breakthroughs happening in situations. So it's a really interesting journey.
Thank you. Would you feel comfortable sharing what you felt were the immediate shifts for you?
Sure. It's the awareness of the saboteurs. So the initial exercises are around just identifying when the saboteurs are there, which is all the time. But it's a matter of just identifying when they happen. Right? Which is quite discouraging at first, because they are literally there all of the time. And it's like, oh my God, I can't get away from these people. They're constantly nagging, they're constantly undermining, they're constantly there. And that's quite discouraging at first. But the point is that, being aware of it means that you can then take action to address it, right? It's knowing what you don't know. And that's when it becomes really, really powerful. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Darren. And on that note, I think that we tend to judge ourselves for having so many saboteurs, and it's literally the way our brain works. It's the way we're designed to work. It's It's the way our brain processes. It's no different to our body burping or farting or doing all these other things. It's the machinations of our body. Everybody is exactly the same, except what we're doing half the time is we're being led by our saboteurs and we've got no idea. We're diminishing ourselves, we're diminishing other people, we're giving away our power all the time. And when we start to sort of notice the saboteurs, we create choice and we step into the sage. And I can't tell you how just deeply nourishing the sage brain is once you're able to access it, how deeply compassionate, how deeply wise it is. But first of all, you have to quieten your saboteurs. And it's not as complicated as you think. It's not as hard or as transcendental as you think. Structurally, you do this, it will work. It will work. So with that encouragement, you know, I recommend you go in and have a look at the website, Positive Intelligence. The program itself, I can tell you a little bit about. It's 6 weeks and you do it as a group. So I create pods. And I think it costs $9.95 to do it online without any $9.95 USD online if you do it through their website, and that's without any groups or without any extra support. But what I tend to do is because I'm certified as a coach, I can send all my clients on it. I get better rates. I include coaching around it and to really help you embed that into your life and apply it to the various aspects: leadership, creativity, parenting, persuasion, whatever it is, you know. You can apply positive intelligence, the whole idea of saboteur and sage, across pretty much everything. It's amazing like that. And so you go onto this app for 6 weeks and it's hardcore training. They give you a video every week, about an hour to watch, and they will literally take you through all of your saboteurs. And then the next week we'll talk about your judge and so forth. And then they will take you through all of your sage superpowers, and they will teach you as you go along with the practice, with the opportunity to practice and embed. It's utterly fascinating. I mean, for me, it's probably the most proactively powerful tool that I've got in my armory as a coach that I share with my clients, because it's all up to them. You know, they can just do this anytime, and it literally rewires your brain. Yeah. So I'm noticing the time. I just want to ask any final questions, comments, or shares?
Just say thank you for your time as always, Georgina. I'm actually going to drop off earlier because I've got to prepare for the next meeting now. So thank you very much, as always, and I'll catch up with you soon, okay?
All right, take care, Eric. Thank you all for showing up to this workshop. It's been fantastic spending the time with you. And I'll send you an email with all the links as well, and with the video replay, and the four steps of the operating system, so you've got it on hand. If you do want to stay up to date with my workshops, just let me know. I'll add you to my mailing list. But in the meantime, I just want to say it's just been a pleasure spending the time with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Georgina.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.